Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into another video. I'm really sorry that it took me so long to kind of get some more content out to you guys. If you missed my last video, I am taking a step away from retail at the moment as it's just not enjoyable for me right now. And so I have decided to pick up a Cataclysm private server at currently. Um, this is because I do enjoy the Cataclysm expansion as a whole from a PvP perspective, and also there is a high chance that Wrath Classic will transcend into Cataclysm Classic, and I would love to have a bit of practice have beforehand when that comes out to have an upper hand, pretty much. But in this video, I thought I'll just start it off pretty slow and basic with a tier list on how these classes perform, where I kind of place them in the meta, and what's good, not so good, and what's not so great. But with that being said, let's get right into this one. So first up, we've got Death Knight. Now, Death Knight is coming from Wrath and to now, it feels like Death Knight hasn't changed much. It's just gotten better. Death Knight has so many tools, so many ways to kind of do damage and not die at the same time. It's their pets, their unholy pet, their gargoyle can put out some insane pressure by themselves without the Death Knight even touching you, and also defensively they're quite sound now, being able to icebound in stuns, having AMS, AMZ, Death Pact, Lichborn heal. It's just, if the class just feels like an absolute god. I think the only weakness is being trained by melee cleaves because they can't really deal with melee damage for too long. They have icebound, that's about it. But into casters they can really thrive. I think Death Knight is deserving of an S tier, to be completely honest. Now, Druids, I'm going to focus on Feral and Boomkin. Feral, it feels like it's a very well-rounded class. Um, it can do a lot of damage passively through bleeds, or directly through ferocious bites. They have very decent mobility in the form of just being a feral, being able to kind of shift out of slows. They can't shapeshift out of roots in this expansion, only slows. But they can dash and stampeding roar out of roots, which is pretty good for them. And they're very sound defensively. They have a lot of defenses in terms of bark skin, wall, frenzied regen, and just bear form. Being in bear form alone reduces damage by quite a bit as well. Boomkin, on the other hand, is quite open to being trained. It's not that great defensively. Melee cleaves can just stick onto you. But I think into caster cleaves, you can definitely thrive a bit more and do more, as your class kind of does some pretty good spread damage. But I think Druid as a whole is definitely deserving of a high A tier. Moving on to Hunter. Hunter is it. I'm gonna focus on MM, as MM is pretty much the main spec of Hunter in this expansion. MM feels like it never stops, in the sense that it does so much damage. It does um, it has a lot of control in the form of monkey stun and sacrifice, raw sacrifice, dismissing your pet, resummoning a new pet, and having monkey stun and raw sacrifice again. It just feels like they have so much utility in their disposal. They have a silencing shot, they have freedom, they can reset all these cooldowns, their traps, literally every hunter ability that they have with readiness. um, their only weakness is that they don't have a heal. Their only heal is built into Chimera Shot. That heals for like maybe 5, 10k if it crits. So it's not very reliable. Sorry. But as a whole, I feel like Hunter is just so so good. In terms of where I put this one, I think this would be a high A for sure. Moving on to Mage. Now, Mage has two competitive specs in Cataclysm, Fire and Frost. Frost is pretty well rounded. It has a lot of damage, either casted or instant. It has a very, very good defensives with Ice Barrier, Roots, a Blanket CS, Ice Block. It has two Ice Blocks because it has Cold Snap as well. It just feels like mages can do so much. They can control the game very, very well if put in the right hands. Fire, on the other hand, has insane damage. You know, if they set up their combust right and they combust you, they can pretty much 100 you in a couple seconds, and it will feel like that really. Um, I would say the only weakness with fire is that it's a little bit weaker defensively, as you only have one block. You do have your cauterize proc as well, but you know, having one block does make you feel a little bit scared once that block does go away. Whereas, you know, frost, you use one block, you snap, 30 seconds later you can block again. But I'd say mage as a whole is definitely, I would say, probably an S tier class caster. Paladin, I'll be focusing on red as this is our DPS tier list. Red Paladin is pretty damn solid, I would say. Red Paladin, I would say, is one of the most versatile melees out there. You have a lot of utility for your team in terms of Hand of Freedom, Sacrifice, and Blessing of Protection. You have very high damage output with your cooldowns, and you also have very good off healing with Word of Glory, creating for upwards of 90k right now. And this is in the first season of the expansion. It just gets better as the expansion goes on, pretty much. But I would say Red Paladin is a very solid class. Defensively, you have bubble, you have your sacred shield on a minute cooldown, which feels pretty nice. You're kind of weak into casters, because they can really control you, make sure you're clean, that you can't really get freedoms off and get value from it. Make you really sit at that pillar and question whether or not you're safe to go out. But I think into other melee cleaves, you can really shine. Um, I would say Red Paladin is definitely an A tier. Probably not as good as Feral. Might be better than Feral just because of the off heals. You can definitely do a lot, but I think as a class as a whole, I think Red Paladin is not as good as these two. Um, Priest, focusing on Shadow here, obviously. Now, Shadow Priest it's a good spec, but I feel like there's a few things holding it back. It's First of all, its damage is very good. With when you have your three orbs, your Dark Archangel, Mind Blast is hitting hard as hell. Your dots do decent damage. You have a very good utility for your team in terms of shields. You can off heal, life grip. Very versatile caster. But the only thing is that you're very susceptible to being trained down by melee cleaves, and you don't really have too much mobility to help yourself get away. Um, the only real cooldown you have as a Shadow Priest is Dispersion, and that can feel um, like once that's gone, it can feel very scary for you as a priest. I would say it's it's not amazing, but it's definitely not bad. You can definitely make this spec work. I've seen it in play. It can do some very insane things. With that being said, I think as a caster, it's definitely deserving of being in the A tier still. Um, when it comes to Rogue, Rogue is just Rogue is Rogue. Rogue offensively has so much going for it. You have a silence, you have two stuns, cheap shot and kidney shot. Um, you have smoke bomb that you can use offensively or defensively. You have blind that you can use both offensively or defensively. You have so many tools. You have gouge, dismantle. You have steps. It vanishes. It's the list just goes on and on and on. It's so good, this class. You have cloak and combat readiness. Combat readiness is like a wall. it's a stacking buff. So when the rogue presses the cooldown, he'll get a stack every time he's hit with a physical ability for 10% damage per stack, maximum of 5. So you get a 50% debuff buff to reduce physical damage. And obviously cloak and combat readiness will share a cooldown, so you can't press both at the same time. It will have to be one or the other, pretty much. Really and truly, rogue. Yeah, you have dance as well. That's when you're doing your insane pump damage. Like, I don't know what else to say. Honestly, rogue, I think it's the easy S tier. Shaman, shaman. So I'll start off with Ellie. Ellie is capable of doing a lot of damage. It can pump out a ridiculous amount of damage if left unchecked. But that's the thing; it's rarely left unchecked because it has so little mobility. You don't really have too much going for you. You know, you have Ghost Wolf and you have Thunderstorm. You have I was about to say Earth Grab, but that's retail. You have very limited tools to kind of keep people off your back. That's the only weakness with Ellie. And you don't really have too many defensive cooldowns. You know, you have your proc, and when you get to low HP, you get like a heal. But that's about it. So besides that, you're just like waiting to die, pretty much. I'll say Ellie's definitely a slept on spec, but I think it's very capable of doing things in the right comp, like lock Ellie Druid, lock Ellie Pally, something along those lines. It's definitely not a spec to be taken for granted. And then enhancement as well, it's a very nice hybrid in terms of it can do some good damage. Defensively, is okay. Has some good self healing. You have what's it called? Shamanistic Rage on a 1 minute cooldown, which is a 30% damage reduction that you can use in stuns. Um, so I guess that's okay, but I don't think you're competing too much with the other melee in this list as a shaman, really. I as a caster, I think you definitely are. I think as a whole, I think you're definitely up here in the A tier. Moving on to locks. Now locks, I think. Um, so I'm gonna just focus on affliction here. Destro can work, but I think it takes a lot more to make it work, and you won't really see that many Destro locks, if any at all, that are really good. But when they are, they can be very scary. But I'm just gonna focus on Athlete here. Athlete is insane. It can do a lot of damage, spread pressure, not just single target. And the more damage it's doing, spread damage, the more self healing it has. You like passively you're just healing yourself from every dot that's ticking, and then your drain life is hitting harder with the more dots you have rolling on the target. You have port to kind of get away from sticky situations. You have soul burn that you can use with your port to get a sprint, your health stone to get extra health, your drain life for it to channel faster. It feels like locks almost don't die. They're one of the most tanky casters that you can face behind Mage. But I feel like locks are just very good. Even into casters, they're very good. Into melee, they're still pretty good as well. You have slows, you have curse of weakness to help reduce some of that damage you're taking. Demon armor, obviously gives you some more armor and also increases the healing that you receive from your spells, so which is quite nice. But I would say Lock is definitely deserving of probably a top spot in A tier above all these casters here. And then last but not least, we've got Warrior, which is probably I think one of the most well-rounded melee out there. Offensively, you're doing some insane damage with your Wreck and Deadly Calm. with you have some good mobility with charge and heroic leap, and even intervene if you can use it in the right way. Um, Defensively, you have shield block, shield wall, rallying cry. What else? Enraged regen, disarm, spell reflect. You're so versatile. You have tools for every situation, and I think that this class is only as good as the person who's playing it. This class can do a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And I think it's quite slept on. Honestly, it's one of the more played melee, but I feel like a lot of people don't play it to its potential. But I think Arms Warrior is definitely one of the top melee. Uh, Let me think. I'd say it's maybe above Paladin. Maybe. I'd say maybe it's about here. Maybe it's about there. Like, not to say that it's worse than these specs, but I don't know. I feel like just by itself, it can do a lot, but it just requires a team behind it to kind of help it push over those hurdles, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna be it for this tier list. Obviously, let me know your thoughts, what you agree with, what you don't agree with. If you feel like I put something too high, too low, or didn't give something enough credit, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.